I believe this is the last video I'm going to do because I need to go be with my family. This is, I'm looking at the time and I need to go be with my family. I need to spend these last hours with them. This is part 4 of my testimony. It's not doing justice to what God has done, but I pray that He will testify through it, that those of you who've been here on the channel witnessing it as I've gone through it, that you're going to finally be able to see and understand and pick up your covenant. God taught me through the building that He had me buy how to give everything I had, even my own home, for His house, how to keep foreigners out of it, uncircumcised in heart, how to heal and restore it, how to care for it even as it was a burden and gave nothing back, how to abandon it because He was getting ready to abandon His house, is getting ready to abandon His house. He told me that I saved my house by putting it up for His. He told me to stay in the land even when it was sold. He supplied power, gas, and water. And then the water was shut off, and He continued to supply it according to my faith, bringing water out of pipes that had none. I had no food, no money. My children supplied my needs. My daughter cooked meals for me each week and sent me home with them. God told me to save that front house for them in 2020. I saved it all that time, only to learn that this was a spiritual metaphor. I cared for the land with limited resources. I had no trash service, so if I cleaned up the yard, I had to bag up the trash and go and visit my kids and throw it in their dumpster. He provided. My home was auctioned, but not before He delayed it for 3 months with the Eaton fire. Then another month after it was auctioned, by the owners just disappearing, like not coming back for a month. And a month and a half before my completion of this, I was locked out of the home with everything I ever had inside. Every memory saved of my daughters, the play area and life I was creating for my grandchildren and my children. God caused me to invest and toil for all of this, only to give it up in an ultimate demonstration that I choose Him, not things, not this world, not plans or emotional attachments, not even the safety of my own children. Everything is gone. All I have is what was in my suitcase when I had gone back. The things that God has taught, fulfilled, and revealed, the ways He testified and proved Himself, the miracles He performed, healing me when no doctor could, the wisdom and understanding that He has provided me. All of these things are God's name. These are the things that He's been revealing in the covenant to me and through me. And I remember the early days of Him drawing me to Himself when someone had mentioned to me that God has, names that He uses in which, those names have meaning. And I wrote about that in A Soul Aligned. And someone called me the salt of the earth, and I didn't know what that meant. And that day, a couple hours after they had spoken those words, there was a box on my porch that had 16 pounds of salt in it. 4 4-pound boxes of canning salt. And just these things that God did early on and throughout it to prove to me who He was and to prove to me that He was with me. And in 2022, when He said to me, I'm getting ready to anoint my witnesses on Pentecost, and I had still been following this Reformed Judaism, this rabbinical calendar that shows up when you Google when is Pentecost, and I was expecting to be for some tongues of fire experience on June 4th, 2022, and it didn't happen. I was very disappointed. But one thing that I did know and didn't connect to Pentecost at all was that on May 18th, 2022, He was doing something with me, and I shared about it with you on this channel, that He was doing something in which I had previously, my daughter and I laugh because ever so often, like what is this thing called? The music or whatever, the stuff on your MacBook. I don't know. I'm not a techie person. I can't remember what that app is called, but it'll show up Apple Music, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, it'll show up, it'll pop up, and it'll have like an old video that I did, and I'll be like, you know, there's like so much hope and so much naivete in my voice, you know, as I'm reading to you from a solo line, and I'm just so joyful that I get to share the good news. That's not how I sound anymore. It's just not how I sound. But when I was doing those videos, I was always preparing, you know, for a lesson and preparing from the book or reading you something from the book. But from May 18th on, it was just open your mouth and speak. Open your mouth and speak. And he did anoint me that day. It wasn't a tongues of fire experience, but I will tell you, it's something that I could not have made up, because there are times where he's had me giving a teaching or speaking something that I was edified by, especially early on. And I didn't have any ability to do that. So he anointed me to teach. And then as time went on, he anointed me to prophesy and to tell you what was going on. And did I say, thus saith the Lord? Did I make a big show of it? Did I go, I'm a prophet? Did I do all that? Did I go on YouTube and say, prophecy, big warning from God, word of the Lord, word of the day? Did I do these things? I didn't do those things. I just spoke to you. I showed you in scripture as he was teaching me. And then I showed you in real time what God is fulfilling, what he's been fulfilling. And guess what? I wasn't exalted for it. I didn't speak a blessing over you, because that's not what prophets do. Sorry, guys. I spoke warning. I spoke return to God. I spoke, this is what the truth is. You've been deceived. These people are lying to you. Return to God. Here's how to do it. I lived out my testimony in front of you like a spectacle, like the scum of the earth. I tolerated mistreatment, accusations and attacks in various messages and posts online, and people's podcasts accusing me of having a religious spirit, a Jezebel spirit, even though the word doesn't talk about any of that. I've done this faithfully. And a year later, God began to start revealing his calendar. According to the moon, I can't make that up. I can't make that up. Revealing his calendar according to the new moon that he commanded us to observe, that the people in the Bible were observing, so why aren't we? He revealed his calendar to me, that I have since shared with you, and counting back Pentecost to that season. You can't make it up. You cannot make it up. Counting it back based on what he has said. May 18th, 2022 was Pentecost. Period. I don't care what Reformed Judaism is telling you. You've already been warned in Hosea 2:11 and Lamentations 2:6 that they have lost his calendar. Don't claim to me that Jews have been maintaining his calendar, because that's a straight up lie. They lost his calendar. And to claim that Saturday is the Sabbath, there is no Saturday in the Bible. There's no biblical precedent for it. So where did you get it? I've proven to you based on season, based on the season and the moon, that day was Pentecost. It's irrefutable, because there are date-specific holy days and there are season-specific holy days. That is a season-specific holy day, and it cannot be refuted based on the faithful witness in the sky. God revealed to my children. He brought in my stubborn son, who I love, but was stubborn. And you know what? Thank God he was stubborn, because when he got it, we knew. We knew that came from God. God demonstrated to us no one can get it unless it comes from him. And each one of them have true testimonies. They don't have testimonies because of me, because they're submitted to me. I'm not their God. They have testimonies because they went to God. My grandson's birth, that was a huge part of our testimony. How in the world could you have a non-medicalized birth? How could you even do that? That's how we thought. How could we do this? We were so scared. And we were so scared, especially because my kids hadn't come out of medicine yet. God hadn't proven to them that he's sovereign over that too. We were so terrified. And so because they left that door open to the devil was able to threaten and fearmonger and do all of these things. Oh, you're going to die. The baby's going to die. You know, all of these lies in order to covet his birth. And you know what? Jeremiah has been very, very healthy. He is an extremely healthy boy. And Rosie is an extremely healthy baby. And my daughter is healthy. All of us are healthy. There is no reason for God to bring illness or disease or sickness on us except for our sin. And every time, which has been rare, but every time that God has afflicted us with something, it's been so minimal. So minimal. For years now, none of us has gone to a doctor, gone to the hospital, nothing. It's been so minimal, and he tells us immediately, this is what I'm dealing with you on. Now go deal with it. Now go examine it. Jeremiah's birth was huge, but my daughter had prayed, if you don't want me going to the hospital, I need you to make it very clear. And God made her contractions so close together from the very beginning. And she suffered for 10 and a half hours. She suffered. She couldn't have even gone down those stairs to go to the hospital, which is literally minutes away. She couldn't have. And it was very clear. By the time Rosie came along and she was born, God didn't need to bring my daughter through all of that suffering. So, see, if you're working things out with him, he doesn't need to bring more grief than is necessary, and he won't. Rosie was born in an hour and a half. In an hour and a half, my daughter caught her own baby. I literally cleaned up the area where she gave birth, cleaned her, cleaned the baby, did the laundry, and that was it. It was like nothing to it. Put the placenta in the, bag that they had designated, and that was it. I mean, it was nuts. I don't think we've ever gone through like a cold that quickly. She wasn't walking around like she got butchered, because that's what they do to you in the hospital. That's what they do to women. That's what they did to me. She just healed. She was good. We were laughing. She was fine. She wasn't wiped out. It was so crazy to witness. And you know what? We were all concerned about Grandma needs to come out so she can watch Jeremiah, that way Jeremiah won't be scared, and the screaming and the blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was like in the middle of the night, Jeremiah was asleep, and that was it. I mean, it's just crazy. The other thing that I've talked to you about is God bringing water in the pipes. That was a straight up miracle. I mean, I couldn't even believe he brought water through the pipes when the water was shut off. Healing me emotionally. That's huge. I was a disaster. Completely compelled by my unresolved suffering, by my traumas. And I went through some very serious stuff as a child. Healing me emotionally. That was impossible. I had a therapist at one point tell me, well, maybe these things won't go away. What if these things don't go away, Carrie Ann? Well, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? What have I been doing for the last 30 years? What if these things don't go away? What if your relations, the people you're in relationships with, just have to put up with your crazy stuff? What if you have to continue to suffer feeling this way? No, that's not what God has set us apart for. But that's what he hands us over to when we choose idols. I'm not plagued by those things anymore. I'm not compelled by that spirit anymore. He's caused me to trust him. And that's been very difficult, because I did not have adults in my life that I could trust when I was growing up. I became a super adult, the boss lady in every situation, so that I didn't have to be vulnerable, so that I didn't have to trust anyone. And I was constantly hurt because I was always taking care of everything. There was no one to be there to take care of things with me. Not a husband, not a best friend, not anything. He caused me to trust him, the one who is not seen. He caused me to trust him to take me to places that no one wants to go. No one wants to go to homelessness. No one wants to be without water. No one wants to stay in a land that's already been sold. No one wants to give up their wealth when they're already semi-retired at 40 years old. No one wants to do those things. But he caused me to trust him in ways I could never have imagined, in what is unseen, causing me to give everything up, causing me to throw away my idols and never look back, giving me joy and peace, showing me what is real and true, and testifying in the word, always giving his two witnesses by his spirit and his truth, making me understand the word truly. and giving me provision, being my husband, supporting me, guiding me. But I had to submit to him. He's taught me his word with total confidence. I am not afraid to speak to anyone. I am not afraid to debate with anyone. I'm not afraid to have a discussion with a single person at the drop of a hat regarding his truth. I have complete and total confidence that his spirit is enough to teach and anoint me to teach, to bring God's people together in unity in his truth. I have no doubt in my heart, I have no doubt in my mind that God is enough. And I have full confidence in what he's taught me. 30 years of therapy couldn't do that, but God did it. And he put it on display so that you could learn from it. I have no fear of man or of defending my faith and what I know. I have no fear of exposure. I have no fear of death. I have no fear of captivity. I have only zeal for the truth. I have only fidelity and faithfulness to what he set me apart to do. And the devil will be triumphed over today. The devil will lose his place in the heavenly realms today. And I spoke that to you 3.5 years ago, before he did any of the things that he's doing today. I told you before it happened so that you would know when it did, just like Jesus did. I had no ability to fulfill this on my own, or to even have a role beyond speaking it to you and telling you, this is what I'm doing. This is what's going to happen according to God's word. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, but my grandson just burst through the door and scared me half to death. So I'm coming back to the video. All right. He has relieved me of the compulsion to belong. That was a huge compulsion for me. It led me into a lot of idolatry and a lot of following people who didn't have good motives, users and stuff like that. But it was what I was handed over as a result of my idolatry. Relieved me of the compulsion to belong, because I ended up finding belonging in him. And it turns out, in what he's had me doing, he hasn't allowed me to have friends. He didn't allow me to have a husband. I've had to learn how to have a very different relationship with people and with family. And he says, let this people turn to you. You must not turn to them. He has required me to put him first and not to figure things out with human beings, but to go to him. He has made me unafraid of what people think or slander or do not understand. All of my confidence has been in him. He's caused me to walk in the steps of the Lord, in Jesus' steps, in order to understand what I've been given. And I've demonstrated that for you. Particularly what he's been putting on me is Psalm 22. He's taught me his holy days, his new moons, his calendar, his true Sabbaths. He's removed holidays. He's taught me about images, flags, crosses, fish, doves. Remove them, guys. These are just images. He's taught me about idols. Idols are anything you're putting before him, including distractions and worry. Images and idols are not the same thing. Images are things that you're setting up and having a relationship with. And don't tell me you don't have a relationship with your cross, because you most definitely do. Don't tell me that that's a representation of Christianity, because you were told not to set up a cross. You were told not to set up an image, bow down and kiss it, which is exactly what the Harlot Catholic Church does. And you got that image from the Harlot Catholic Church through Constantine the Fake. No Christian in the Bible was using an image of the cross. Idols are anything that you put before him, including distractions and worry and rumination. You need to be fully committed and occupied by God. Fully committed and submitted. And when you start feeling compulsion, you need to recognize what that is. That is a spirit. When you start feeling the feeling of fear, you need to turn to God, or it's going to become a spirit of fear. You are expected to be occupied all the time. Don't let anyone in counterfeit Christianity tell you that you can't live by the Spirit all the time. That's what you were designed for. So if you want to believe what people believe who make up their own doctrines, then go ahead and go for that. But you've been told the truth. He's taught me about tithing, that it has been fulfilled in sacrifice. It was always part of sacrifice, and it's been used to maintain the royal splendor of the Antichrist kingdom and make God a marketplace of God. We've been told in Daniel 11 that that's exactly what the prostitutes that bore out of Catholicism did. They imposed a tax that they call tithing in order to maintain the royal splendor of the Antichrist kingdom. He's shown me that the structures of churches are set up to make you dependent, ignorant, and to prevent you from true worship and the covenant as outlined in John 4 and 1 Corinthians 14. You're supposed to be contributing something. You are co-laborers. An overseer is not one who ministers their own counterfeit word to you. You have the gospel. You have God's Spirit, and you need to be built in order to contribute something to build up the church. He has taught me that using words and concepts that are not in the Bible to distort and rewrite doctrine is what these churches are doing. What these so-called pastors and priests and bishops and apostles who give themselves titles for their own glory, that's what they're doing. And you need to recognize it, because that's not what Jesus did. It's also not what Paul did. God's servants are lowered to nothing. And you've watched me do that for your sake, so that you could not accuse me. You could not say for 1 second that I had taken anything for myself in this, because I had everything. I was already semi-retired at 40 years old. What did I need from you? I didn't need this. And then God made a spectacle of me, not by taking everything away from me, but by causing me to give it up for the kingdom of God. In front of you. In front of you. And all along the way, while I've been doing all of this, I've still been accused of doing this for profit, Profit. I've still been attacked and accused of having secondary gain and speaking falsely. These people don't even know what they're talking about. They'll talk about extra biblical doctrines, use their extra biblical doctrines to accuse me of not speaking the truth when I'm speaking on the word. Who can accuse me? God has done this through me. He's shown me that these churches are a divided kingdom, and that Christ said a divided kingdom is not going to stand. Christ has the ability to bring us together in unity by his Spirit. That's what was preached to you by Paul. Unity by his Spirit. There's no division in God's church. None. He's taught me what the Antichrist kingdom is. Babylon the Great, harlot Catholic Church. We know that. It's irrefutable in Daniel 2. We know based on the powers that it starts with, and you just got to count them down, guys. I've demonstrated it to you. I've taught you. Babylon the Great, harlot Catholic Church that calls itself the OG. Why wouldn't Christ be the OG? I don't get it. Christian church, Christ, OG? I mean, like, what are we talking about here? Like, Christ didn't set up his church? He didn't build his church? Oh no, Peter did? Peter did? The rock? Come on. Jesus is the rock. Peter said, or Christ said to Peter, after Peter acknowledged that Christ is the Son of God, that on that rock, that declaration of faith, coming from the heart, that faith is the rock on which he was going to build his church. Not Peter's the first pope. Not checking a box. Accepting some superficial fake doctrine. Babylon the Great, harlot Catholic Church, the prostitutes that bore out of her, Revelation 17:5, the false prophet of the United States, Revelation 13 and 17, and the image of the Antichrist, Revelation 13 and 17. That's the Antichrist kingdom. And y'all think it's pagans, huh? Even though Jesus said, many will come to me and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we do all these things in your name? And he's going to say, depart from me, evildoers, I never knew you. Oh, but the pagans, the LGBTs. Didn't Christ talk about those who claim to see, but are blind? If you didn't see, you wouldn't be guilty, but because you claim to see, you're guilty. He's taught me that grace is merited, turns out. It's just not deserved. There's a difference between merit-based, meaning that you have some sort of merit that you are supposed to enact in a contract, in a covenant, in order to receive the reward. It doesn't always mean that in a contract that the terms of the contract are compensatory to the reward in the contract. And it just so happens that in this situation, that's what it's like. You ever given your child like a chore when they were really young? You're going to wash the dishes and they do like 3 dishes and there's still food stuck to them and you give them their allowance because they're like 2. I mean, my grandson loves to get up and put the gloves on even though they don't fit him and wash the dishes. And we just rave over, I mean, he hasn't really contributed what we need. We don't actually need him to go and take all the clean dishes off of the dish rack and wash them again. We don't need him to do that, but he does it. God doesn't need you any more than we need my 2-year-old grandson to wash the dishes, okay? But we love him, and we love to build him up, and we love that he wants to be a part of what we're doing in this family. You're going to have to be used if you want to be part of his family. Grace is merited. It's just not deserved. The definition in Scripture of grace is God's sovereign choice and mercy. That definition of unmerited favor came from Billy Graham, the fake, who fornicated with the kings of the earth. Since when? Were the kings of the earth listening to Jesus? The leaders of his own church weren't listening to him. The leaders of his own law wouldn't listen to him. But Billy Graham and his son, the important people of the world, listen to them? Give me a break. That is a lie, and it's led a lot of people away from what the truth is in the Word. But you know what? They're still held accountable because they chose to listen to Billy Graham. Those who fornicate with the important people of the world, of the earth, are going to destruction. That which is truly of God cannot be exalted in this world, not through wealth, status, or otherwise. You have to get comfortable with being nothing, with serving, with being despised, hated, slandered, killed by those who claim to be doing a service to God. The person in service takes the lower position, but has been perverted in this world to be exalted and honored. That's a red flag, guys. He's taught me how to actually listen to him in every way he's speaking. As Elihu speaks to Job in Job 33. Body metaphors. All it is, he's spoken in parable the entire time he was here. Why wouldn't he speak in parable through your body and enact that through your circumstances or your dreams? Another way that he's speaking in parable. He spoke in parable and he still does. Sometimes acting out the parable in your life. Prostitution, illness, defilement, hoarding. Think about that. What is hoarding? Is it a mental illness? Is it a neurological imbalance? Is that what that is? Because that's what science is going to tell you. No, it's a person storing up their treasures here on earth, setting up idols. And if they understand it that way, then they have a decision to make. Then they can go to God and be healed and start storing up their treasures in heaven and stop setting up idols. But until you understand what the truth is and stop relying on pagans who deny God, who deny his sovereignty and deny that he even exists, you're not going to heal. You're not going to understand these things. My son was doing a body metaphor on diabetes. He doesn't actually have diabetes, but there is someone who he loves who has diabetes. And as he was leaning into that metaphor, one of the things that God revealed to him, because you can't just make this up. It's not like, there was a woman, I can't even remember her name. She's probably not worth remembering anyway. She used to work with AIDS patients and had come up with all of these, these things that this disease has to do with this, and, had a template. But that's not what I'm promoting here. Okay? What I am telling you is you need to go to God and receive from God what these things are about for you, not in a templated way. As my son was leaning into this metaphor, he realized that this person wanted only the sweet things in life. That was kind of their shtick. Only wanting these positive things. Doesn't want to deal with negative feelings. Using this life just to gratify the flesh. The most powerful thing that God did in me was through the crushing. things you can't understand. There are just things you cannot possibly understand until he does it, until he brings you low enough to see. He taught me about idolatry. And once you know it and you return to him and you remove the idols, it's done. It's done. There's no hoarding. There's no disorder. There's no diagnosis. It's done. You're healed and sealed. 7 years of going to medicine. You know how many diagnoses I had? Did it ever lead to healing? Did it ever lead to understanding? God is going to heal and seal you. That's it. And it's going to be done. Because it is not of use to him for you to have diagnoses. It's not of use to him for you to be sick. He has afflicted you in order that you would return and receive what he's doing in you. I asked my kids to give me a list of the things that they lean on when they're when they're needing to stand in their faith, when God is shaking them to make sure that they're sturdy. And my daughter mentioned Pentecost, which I talked about in another video, God revealing his calendar and the fact that he anointed me on Pentecost and I couldn't have even known. I never said, not for 1 minute did I say, oh, that this didn't happen on that day. I just didn't know it was Pentecost. But then he revealed it and proved his calendar. You can't deny that. The births of both of their children, and I'm not just talking about, oh, the miracle of birth. I'm talking about how God did that. I talked about it in the last video. I'm not sick. I don't have rashes anymore. I don't have hives that break out and open up into blistering, oozing wounds on my body. I don't have any of that. My daughter watched it. She watched it. So did my son. They saw the condition that I was in, and they saw God heal me. The other thing that she talked about is the timing being fulfilled. The things that I talked about, that I said, these things are going to happen, and God fulfilled them in the exact timing. I couldn't have made up the timing. I couldn't have made up that ICE is doing this right now, that there was a meeting with Hegseth and Trump and the military so that they can go through towns and enact and train their military on U.S. civilians. I mean, give me a break. This is insane. I couldn't have exposed Israel as being the image of the Antichrist. God has done all of this. He had me speak it, and he fulfilled it. And he said, a time is coming when all my words through my prophets will be fulfilled. And he said to Ezekiel, in the days to come, they're going to know that a prophet has been among you. That a prophet has been among them. And I'm saying that to you. You are going to know. You should but know by now. There's no reason. You have no excuse for not knowing by now. I spoke these things ahead of time. God is the one who fulfilled them. God taught me the word to know what he was telling me was going to happen. None of the church doctrines are based in scripture. And so my daughter is saying that we know the times. We should know the times. Scripture actually makes sense now. The Festival of Trumpets, that no one showed up at my house at that time when I was supposed to be kicked out. And, you know, it was hard because I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to have to break the Sabbath in order to pack everything up. And the kids were like, no, God wouldn't have you do that. And God hasn't changed the plan. And I was like, you're right. Okay, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to risk being driven out by a sheriff and losing everything I have in order to be in obedience with God. And no one shut up for an entire month. Restoration of truth, the calendar, scripture, body metaphor. The things that my son mentioned is that the way in which God brought my daughter and him together. I've talked about their engagement. I've talked about the fact that they were both on this trip to Spain, and they ended up in a situation in which they were isolated and had to spend time together, and they fell in love. I've talked about their engagement, how God had been speaking to me at the same time. I raised my daughter not to get married. I was terrified of marriage. Terrified of marriage. Because of what I saw my dad do to his wives. I raised her not to get married, and I was taking a shower one day, and God said, ask me about marriage. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to ask you about this, and like, it's going to be 2 weeks of you building this message in me. I said, okay, well, is marriage important to you or not? And he said, covenant, immediately to me. And I was like, oh, of course it's important to you. Okay. And he had been grieving me about these earrings that I had bought myself for my 40th birthday. They were like massive earrings. They were massive diamonds. My son didn't have the money to buy the ring that he felt that she deserved. And I was trying to figure out, what in the world am I going to do with these earrings that I can't even wear? I can't wear them. They're disgusting. And I was able to help him. But the day that he came over, I texted the kids. They'd been busy in school. I texted the kids and I said, I'd like a day with each of you. Are you guys able to do that? He immediately texted me back. That was not like him. He was so busy in school. And he texted me back right away and he said, yes. He showed up at my house in a suit on that day. He did not know that I had scheduled an appointment with my jeweler to go look at rings. He hadn't said anything to me. He didn't know. He showed up at my house in a suit, and I felt a little weird. I was like, you showed up in a suit to like hang out with me, but okay. And I said, I didn't get it yet. And I said to him, oh, look at you in your suit. And he said, well, today is a special day. And I said, what do you mean? And then I realized what he was doing. He was asking for her hand. He didn't know what God had been talking to me about with the earrings. He didn't know that God had told me to pray and ask him about marriage. He didn't know that I had that appointment with the jeweler. And we both just started crying. And we sat down on the couch and he started telling me that it's time. That God's been telling him that it's time, but he's wanted to do this, but that he didn't feel that he could. But that God had been showing him that he was going to make a way. God was going to make a way for him to be able to do this, and he was going to take care of them. And he said, I've been going on these runs, and God's been talking to me about it. And I know it's not much, but I just got $2,000 in grant funding for school, and I just felt that that was confirmation that he is going to take care of this. He is going to take care of me. And that it's time, and I need to do this, and I need to make it right. A year later, they had that baby that medicine told them that they couldn't have. And 2 years later, they had another baby that medicine told them they couldn't have. And they are truly the best parents I have ever seen. Because God has raised them. He's raised them to be those parents. He mentioned the birth of his children and that God creates and he brings to delivery. He talked about our relationship because I really didn't like him when I met him. I didn't like anyone. You know, at that time I was so spiritually sick. I didn't have the capacity to really care about anyone. And God has he's had to bring us to, each of us, to a place of unity by his Spirit. And there's always been, any kind of like argument that we've had or anything, he's always brought us together in unity by his Spirit. We've always learned a lesson and grown from it. Building him as a provider, testing him to see if he would put God first. He was scared when he had to submit his Sabbath days and holy days. The seventh month on God's calendar is full of holy days, and that's really difficult to submit that to your employer and be like, I'm going to have to take off all these days. Well, why? What is this? It's for religious reasons. Well, what about, what are you talking about? New moon. What are you talking about? Isn't Saturday, your Sabbath? Isn't Sunday your Sabbath, right? And then you have to explain this to your employer, It's really hard. But this was, one of the first things that God did with him to build his faith. And he's been doing it ever since. He mentioned the various lessons that God has taught us, using the physical to understand the spiritual, such as the example that I gave you of keeping that house for my kids, and then realizing that this was a spiritual lesson, that he had brought them into my house and his house through me. And lastly, he talked about provision, that he will provide, and the tests that God does. They're already living paycheck to paycheck. And then these other things come up, that have to be paid for. But he just keeps, you have to hold on to what he has done. You just keep going back to what he's done what his name is, who he's proven himself to be, what his word says, and you keep trusting in him, and he always proves himself, but he doesn't give you the manna up front. You have to believe in him, and this is part of his way of keeping you in tight, and it's not something to loathe. It's not something to go outside of him and start looking to the world so that you can be like the world and store up treasures. Remember that God stripped me of everything. I had wealth. I had everything up front that I could possibly need. But that isn't what he chose to do. I've mentioned to you also the questions that we asked on the new moon, on the second day of new moon, and how he has demonstrated every single month. And I hope that you guys will continue in that you will ask yourselves these questions and reflect back on what has God done this month? What has he taught us? How has he brought us together as a body? What are the themes that he's raising? What are the themes that he's raising going forward? What is it that we need to stand in? Reflect on those things, because you need to remember who he is. This is why he established his appointed times, so that you would remember who he is. One of the other things is him bringing in my daughter's friend during these last days. That's been a huge thing that God has done, a huge part of my testimony in these last days. And the last thing that I personally want to say to you is, in these last moments, I'm reminded of 2 Chronicles chapter 6 and 7, in which Solomon has spent all these years building this temple and presenting this offering to God. But it isn't unless God responds and decides that that's where he's going to dwell. That otherwise it's just a building. But if God's going to dwell there, if he chooses that temple, then it becomes a temple. And so Solomon dedicated this temple, but then he said something that's so interesting before God responded. He said, "Are you really going to dwell with us on earth? Like, I've done all of this, Lord, everything that you told me and the way that you told me to do it. But will you really dwell with humans on earth?" And it's something that I've been doing. I've gone through this entire sacrifice, this entire offering for 1,260 days. Are you really going to kick Satan out of the heavenly realms? Have you really used me for this, for such an honor, for such a time, for such a purpose? Are you really going to save us? Are we really going to dwell with you in eternity? Are you really going to take care of my kids? Am I really going to be taken and then enter your glory? I just want you to know you're going to feel that way. You're going to feel that way during the time of great distress. Like, we're going through so much, Lord. During the Antichrist reign, you're going to feel that. We're going through so much. Do you really love us? Am I really yours? Have you really set me apart to endure these things, to suffer these things? Have I believed in vain? Have I been running this race in vain? Do I really have a hope set before me? I want you to know you're going to feel these things. You are going to feel these things. This is the last video I'm going to do. It's the last video that I'm going to do before the 1,260 days is over. And I don't know if you'll ever hear from me again. I don't know if I'll be taken tonight. It's something that I am expecting that I'll be taken tonight. But I don't know, because God hasn't revealed when he's going to do this. And I think that the reason why is because I need to continue to stand in what he's had me doing. It's easy, especially when you have people accusing you and dismissing you and invalidating what it is that you're doing. It's easy to think like, maybe I'm just crazy. But this is part of the reason why I've done this series of my testimony, is so that I can stand in the faith and stand in the truth that God has done these things. There's nothing on this list that I'm uncertain about, that I have any doubt. God has done these things. I can't deny them. And I won't deny that he taught me, before I even knew what a witness was, what I was going to be doing. And then he taught me his word. And I am not guilty of any of you. I am not guilty of any of your blood. If you choose not to return to him, if you choose not to heed the message, I know that I have poured myself out every single day, and that there is no excuse for your guilt. There is no excuse. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance. Now he requires everyone everywhere to repent. And not to do it with words, but to do it truly in your heart. I told my daughter I'm doing the last video, and she said to me, okay, well, ask them what the difference is between a crocodile and an alligator. And I said, what? And she said, well, one you see later and the other you see in a while. And I think that's kind of funny. I think it's kind of funny because it's actually true. I hope it's true. I hope that I will see you. I hope that I will be able to say, who bore me these? Where did they come from? I was barren and exiled. Who bore me these? This is it. This is the fulfillment of the offering that I've had to give you, that God has given you through me as a piece of clay. Please discern this message with God.